Okay, we're going to talk about raising capital today. My name is Savraj, and I've been doing this for a very long time. For the last 10 years, raising capital has been what I've been doing. Literally, I've been doing it for lots of real estate companies, alternative investment firms, and I've pretty much figured out very effective ways of doing it. So in this little course that I've created, this is going to be the first section, and I'm going to have two more after this. It's going to be three sections to this. So very, very simple, very actionable. I'm not going to really be spending too much time talking about the wider knowledge that's out there, because if we start talking about capital raising in that way, we could be here for years. I mean, there's books and books and books. And if you look at everyone else's opinions on what's right for this or right for that, it can just go on and on and on, especially when you start talking about liability and you start getting into the really nitty gritty details. I'm not going to focus on that. I'm going to focus on what I have done consistently along this 10-year journey, what I've learned to be the most effective. And that's what I'm going to share with you. I'm going to share with you what I know to be true, and that works very, very well. So that's what this is. It's me telling you how I've done it. So without further ado, let's just jump straight into it. If you are looking to raise capital for real estate, right? You want to buy big multifamily buildings. You want to buy, multitudes of single family homes, or perhaps you want to buy some commercial real estate. You want to buy parking lots. You want to buy big warehouses, or whatever the case may be. You want to get into the real estate game. Why? Because you know and been told, and you've seen people showing off or flaunting their wealth about how they've made hundreds of millions in real estate. And then you find out, how did you get the money to do that? Sometimes they give you these lies and BS, which is like, oh, I got a job. I made a lot of money in that job. And then I started with this one house and I grew. And it's like, how do you really see that trajectory, that growth happen in such a small space of time? Truth is, a lot of the time they go out and they raise capital to do so. They get loans from the bank, or they get this magical deposit money from somewhere where they can take a 50-50, they can take a 50% mortgage. And whenever you take that first step and you dive a little bit deeper, you start to realize that it's not as easy as they're making out it to be. Especially when someone says, oh, I just go out and raise capital. Well, raise capital from who? If you've never done it, if you don't come out of the banking industry, if you don't have any contacts, if you don't have rich friends and family, how do you expect to do it? Well, I figured it out because I had to. I had to learn how to do it, because I also learned how other companies did it. Other companies that were starting from scratch, starting from a very small situation, they actually figured out how to do it. I've learned from them. I've replicated and I've redeployed, and I've been able to make this work. So in the US, and this is going to be the US that I'm going to focus on in terms of how you structure it, to basically raise money for a fund, there's one way you have to securitize, right? So there's one direction you have to go, and that's basically you contact a lawyer. When you speak to a lawyer, they're going to give you a couple of options. All right. Now I'm going to cut to the chase. The option that you're going to land on, the one that's probably going to be most suitable for you, is Regulation D, Rule 506C. That being the key letter in that one. Regulation D 506C is basically is a legal framework surrounding you being able to raise capital against an entity. And that entity could be a fund. It could be buying real estate. That's what you have. Other options. I mean, the lawyers might talk to you about setting up a note, promissory notes, convertible notes that convert to equity. These are like debt-based instruments, and you can have Regulation A, for instance, which is like a mini IPO. It comes in two tiers. Like tier 1 is you can raise up to 20 million, and tier 2 is up to 50 million. It's like a big pot of money, an empty bucket, if you will, where it has a cap in terms of how much money you can raise, and you can raise that from like anyone. But it's extremely expensive to do that. You're talking about $150,000 because it's complicated, right? So your lawyer's going to have to create this proposal, and then they'll send it to the SEC. They'll make comments on it. They send it back. He has to revise, check with you, send it back to the SEC. It takes it's a long process, and it's very expensive. It's designed to be expensive. It's kind of like a deterrent almost. So you have to really be in the business, understand what you're doing to go down the Regulation A route. Crowdfunding is not so great because there's caps. It's like 1.2 million or something. So it's not so great when you're trying to do big deals, because the whole point of this is raising a whole ton of money, right? You're talking about a couple of million to tens of millions to buy something really big. Regulation D 506C allows you to market an investment. So you're going to create an entity, and you're going to market it out there and contact or have it marketed to potential relevant investors, right? So if they see this, they'll want to buy it. The only catch is you've got to make sure that they are accredited investors. The other regulation you want to make friends with, have your lawyer create for you or work with you on, is Regulation D506C. That's the first. And then it's I'm going to call it Reg S. Means you can also sell offshore. So not just restricted to selling within the United States. You can now sell offshore. So this is the package I tend to go for, and I'm suggesting that you should be at least considering if you're going down the journey of raising capital. So what happens here? You go to your lawyer. First thing he's going to do is tell you to set up an LLC, right? You're going to have to set up an LLC that this is going to be connected to. And then once this is put together, what happens? How do you get, what does this regulation mean? What does this Reg S mean? Regulation D, what does it mean? It means a series of contracts. It means once he's done with figuring out what it is that you want to do, and of course, you're saying, I want to basically have a bank account. I want to ask people to put money in it so that I can go and buy that thing, that house, that big building, right? That's what you want to do, right? You want to buy it and you want to have an agreement. So if I bought this building, I want 30% of the financial rights from it. And then when we sell it, I want 30% of whatever the profit of that sale was. So that's how you're going to make money, but you're going to buy it with other people's money, right? So that's the thing that you're looking to do. And so what you'll have is you'll have an LLC. So you'll have an LLC and you'll have a subscription agreement. Right? You'll have a subscription agreement and you'll probably get, most likely, pretty much 100% you'll get this, an operating agreement. Okay? You get these two things. Now, inside the operating agreement, you'll have other things that are, it's a really big, thick contract, like 60, 70, 100 pages. Inside there, depending on what you're doing in terms of the type of building or the type of fund you're trying to create, you're going to have a bunch of stuff in that operating agreement. You'll have the operating agreement, which basically defines what the investment is. You'll have a management agreement in there. You'll have LLC agreements in there. If you're basically buying land and fractionalizing it and chopping it up, and you'll have, either, some sort of a condominium agreement or sort of co-op agreement or a tenants in common agreement. You could even have other things like a Delaware statutory trust agreement. These are all things that your lawyer will take care of. Okay. I'm not here to give you legal advice on that. I'm just giving you I'm just sort of pulling things out of the air that I know exist, and you can Google these sorts of things and you'll find that kind of information out there. Your lawyer will put this together. I'm just kind of giving you the direction as to what you need to do. You're going to have to securitize if you want to raise money. So that is the first most important step. The next thing I'm going to do is start talking about what you do next, right? Because once you've got this, what does this mean? When you have this, you got your subscription, you got your operating under these sort of regulations, or you're compliant with these regulations, which means you now have this package, right? And what does that package give you? Well, it means that you have this bucket, all right? This bucket that it's an empty bucket. Well, you get the bank account, right? So that's the other thing you have. When you make the LLC, right, you'll have the bank account. So what happens is you now have this bank account that can now take in money, but it's empty. All right. So how are you going to raise capital? Well, here's the thing about Regulation D506C. You can raise capital. Well, you can market anywhere. You can advertise your investment anywhere. Unlike Regulation D506B, B for Bravo. That one, you cannot market, you cannot solicit anywhere. But if you know lots of rich people, if you have connections and can prove a personal relationship with what's defined as an accredited investor, which means someone has to have $1 million net worth outside of their personal residence, or they have to have earned $200,000 per year for at least the last 2 years, or $300,000 per year for at least the last 2 years with a spouse. It's pretty specific, and it means they have some money. And I guess the point I'm trying to make is A, you're going to be compliant with that, but B, if you're working under Regulation D506C, you can actually generally solicit or generally market to anyone, but you can only take in accredited. So you've got to go through a lot of sifting and sorting to make sure that the people coming in are okay to put into your investment. That's okay. All right. So now you've got this structure. You know how you can go about doing it. Well, this is where most people stop because, they have this fantastic idea for the buildings that they have, but they can't seem to get anyone to invest. And why does that happen? Well, because you're selling, right? Selling is hard, right? Because when you speak to accredited investors, people who are actively looking in the market, right? So if you're sending an advertisement out saying, hey, I've got this 20-story multifamily in New York or whatever, and it's paying a 7% rate of return and it's a great investment. Can you put some money towards it and we'll go and buy it? They're getting 100 of these things sent to them every week, because if they're actively in the market looking, they've been signing up for stuff and they're getting loads. So you're now, what makes your business or deals special? All right. Well, not much, right? Because there's some really swanky stuff out there. There's like these really cool hotels that you just can't even compete with. You're starting with this like busted looking 20 unit multifamily because you're starting small and you only want to do a $6 million raise, for instance. Whatever the case may be, the point is it's just hard to speak to them and get them to do business with you. So the next thing I'm going to tell you in the next video is how, or what I did to circumnavigate that. How did I tap into people who had the money, who were accredited, and fill up that pot really quickly? Because that's what you want to do, right? You want to make money fast, or you want to raise capital quick so you can deploy that cash, buy the thing that you want to buy, start raking in capital from that, and move on to the next one and just keep on building it, because that's what I've been doing. So I'm going to share that with you. So I'll see you in the next video.